Marketing, sales, and service. Seniors, welcome back. This is the third installment of a 6-part series for the Precision Exams Marketing 1 certification. We've covered chapters 7, 9, 10 so far, and we are about to cover 15, 16, 17. So now we are on the chapter about promotion. So in section 15.1, we're going to talk about promotion in the form of communication. 15.2 will be the types of promotion, and 15.3 is the promotional plan. Chapter 15 in your textbook starts on page 419, so let's get this started. In section 15.1, with the promotion in the form of communications, 15.1.1, we're going to talk about identifying the promotion function as part of the marketing mix. 15.1.2, we're going to identify the 8 elements of the communication process. In section 15.1.3, we're going to explain the 3 roles of promotion in marketing. And section 15.1.4, we're going to identify the 2 types of communication that are important to marketers. So, in section 15.1.1, we have a definition of the word promotion, and that is this: any form of communication that a company uses to inform, persuade, or remind consumers about its products, services, or even itself. So that any form of communication, that could be radio, TV, print ad, trade show, anything that they can use to inform, persuade, or remind consumers. So here's a reminder of what the marketing mix is. So you've got promotion, price, product, and distribution. Used to be known as the 4 Ps. The distribution part you can think of as place, because that's where your product or service is. Okay, so first question, checkpoint number 1 for section 15.1.1 is just the definition of promotion. What is promotion? So I will pause the video so you can do that now. Okay, moving on. Promotion is a form of communication in section 15.1.2, which starts on page 421. The definition of communication process is this. Simply, it's the transfer of a message from a sender to a receiver. So here's kind of what the communication process looks like. I know it's something that we don't really think about, we just do. From being children, we just communicate with each other, but there's an actual process on how this works and how people teach us to do it. So you have a sender and a receiver, you have the message, you have the message channel, you have to encode and decode, and this is all kind of tied in. And they've made it kind of easy to follow by saying who, what, how, and to whom. So we'll go over the details of that. And the textbook does that as well, on pages 421 and 422 and parts of 423. So some definitions. The sender is the source of the message being sent, and so that would be the who. Definition of the message is what is being communicated. So that one's easy, it's the what. Definition of encoding. So a sender converts an idea into a message that the receiver can understand. So that's taking something that's complex sometimes and making it into simpler terms so that the receiver can actually get it. So a good example of this is just like when you're translating for, let's say, English to Spanish or German or whatever, someone has to encode from the sender. If they're speaking one language, the translator would encode that into a message that the receiver can understand by translating it. Alright, so the message channel, definition of media, the method by which the message travels, also called the message channel. So that's the how. And then definition of vehicle, in terms of the message and form of communication, is the specific broadcast or print choices associated with a message channel. Another definition. Receiver, the person or persons to whom the message is directed, or any person who understands the message that is sent. So it could be someone who is overhearing a conversation, could be a receiver as well. So that's to whom. And then the decoding by the receiver. So definition of decoding is the process by which the receiver interprets the transmitted language and symbols to comprehend the message. A couple last definitions. The term noise in terms of promotion in the form of communication is this. It's any distracting information in the transmission, the message channel, or the receiver's environment that may inhibit or distract from the message. And definition of feedback is the receiver's response to the message from the sender. So, checkpoint question. Name the 8 elements of the marketing communication process used in promotion. And you will find those on page 421 and 422 and a little bit of 423. I will pause now so that you can answer that question. And moving on. The role of promotion and marketing. So basically, it's the big 3. It is inform, persuade, and part of persuasion is why should a consumer do something or act, and then the other one is remind. Pages 423 and 424 are going to go in detail with what we mean by inform, persuade, and remind. So checkpoint question really quick here because it's a short section in the textbook. What 3 roles does promotion play in marketing? I'll pause now so that you can get those 3 roles answered. Moving on. Let's talk about the types of communication. We're now in section 15.1.4. So a couple definitions here. So we have interpersonal communication. Definition is any person-to-person exchange. And then you have mass communication. The definition is an attempt to reach a wide audience through mass media, such as radio, television, magazines, newspapers, and the internet. Details about these can be found on pages 424 and 425. Checkpoint question. What 2 types of communication do marketers commonly use? And we just discussed that in the previous slide. You can see details about it in the textbook. I will pause now so you can answer that question, and we will move on to section 15.2. So now what we'll discuss in 15.2 is the types of promotions. What we have in 15.2.1 is we're going to explain the advantages and disadvantages of advertising as a type of promotion. In 15.2.2, we're going to describe the ways public relations can be used to generate publicity. Sections 15.2.3 identify the benefits and drawbacks of using personal selling to promote a product or service. And then last section, 15.2.4, we're going to explain the advantages and disadvantages of using short-term incentives as sales promotions. So we're starting on page 426 in the textbook, and we have our first term with a definition, and that is advertising. Definition is this: any form of paid non-personal communication that uses mass media to deliver a marketer's message to an audience. Here are the types of advertising. So we have 3. Broadcast media, and the definition of that is it's sent via a signal from a central transmitter to receivers in a geographic area. That could be radio or TV. Print advertising is any paid message in a magazine or a newspaper. And direct mail is any marketing message sent to an audience through the mail. A few more terms. So outdoor advertising, any marketing message designed specifically for ads outside the home, such as the sides of buildings, bus shelters or benches, or signage at sporting events. That could also include the signs that we see right on the buses, and we see it on other vehicles as well. Another type of advertising is ambient advertising. This is any non-traditional medium in the environment of the audience, such as stickers on bananas, messages chalked onto the sidewalks, or hot air balloons. Or we see this around with Chuck Chansey on the weekends. They'll have an airplane in the air, and they'll have a sign behind the airplane advertising the casino. Last term on this page, internet advertising. That is advertising delivered through the internet. Pretty easy one. Now, the advantages of advertising and the disadvantages of advertising. Section 15.2.1 is explaining those in great detail on page 427 and parts of 428, so you'll need to go to the textbook for that part and answer this question once you do so. So here's the checkpoint question. Name several advantages and disadvantages of advertising as a type of promotion. Again, you'll need to find the answers to those. Page 427, 428. I will pause now so that you can do so. And moving on. Public relations. So the definition of publicity is this: any non-paid mention of a product, service, company, or cause. So companies are always looking for publicity because they don't have to pay for it. So if someone's being interviewed on a television show or at the red carpet and they mention your company or product, that is publicity because you didn't have to pay them to do that. Definition of public relations, often known as PR, is the effort to reach consumers by generating positive publicity. There are advantages and disadvantages to public relations, and those are talked about in 15.2.2 on pages 428 and 429. Checkpoint question: what are some of the advantages and disadvantages of public relations? I will pause now so that you can access those pages in the textbook. And moving on, let's talk about personal selling. This is in section 15.2.3 of the textbook. And the definition of personal selling is this: person-to-person communication with a potential customer to inform, persuade, or remind the customer to purchase an organization's products or services. There are advantages and disadvantages, of course, for personal selling. One personal selling you might be familiar with in this area is like Sunrun, solar panels. They're out there on their one wheels all the time doing personal selling. You may have seen them. I know I have in my neighborhood. Okay, so moving on. Checkpoint questions for this section can be found on page 430, and the question is this: name an advantage and a disadvantage of personal selling as a type of promotion. I will pause now so that you may do so. And moving on. Sales promotion in section 15.2.4. So the definition of sales promotion is this: any activity or material that offers consumers a direct incentive to buy a product or service. So again, there are advantages and disadvantages of using sales promotions. Those will be discussed in detail on pages 431 and part of page 432. And so the checkpoint question is this: what is a sales promotion? I will pause now so that you can access that information in the textbook. And moving on to sections 15.3. So what we'll cover in this is the promotional plan. In 15.3.1, we're going to explain the 5 major factors that affect the promotional mix. And then in 15.3.2, we're going to describe the 7 steps in the promotional planning process. So we're going to start on page 433. Definition of the promotional mix. So the combination of advertising, public relations, personal selling, and sales promotion that marketers use to reach a target market. So the things that they talk about when developing the promotional mix are the promotional objective, what the target market is, identifying it, what type of marketing mix they'll use. The company philosophy will be involved in that as well, and then what resources are you going to draw on to initiate your promotional mix for a certain service or product. They're talking about this on page 433 and 434. So you can see the promotion graphic here, and so you've got your balance of price, product, and distribution on one side, and you've got over on the other the target market objective, company philosophy, and resources on the other. So that's the balance that you have to use when you're putting the promotional mix together. Now, checkpoint question for 15.3.1. What 5 major factors affect marketers' choices when developing the promotional mix? I will pause now so that you may access the textbook pages and slide decks to answer the question. Moving on. Promotional planning. The definition is this: the blueprint for how the elements of the promotional mix will work together to deliver a consistent message. So you want them all to work together with consistency, not just independently. It gets a little frazzled when you do that. Alright, so here are the steps in the promotional planning. So number 1, research and analyze the market. and can be found on page 435. Number 2, select the target market. Number 3, identify the promotional objectives. Number 4, set the promotional budget. Number 5, develop the promotional mix. Number 6, implement the promotional plan. And then number 7, evaluate the results. A lot of people forget the last one, but evaluating the results will help you actually do your next promotional planning to see what was successful and what was not. So again, on pages 435, 436, and parts of 437, it talks about in detail the promotional planning. And checkpoint question for this section: what are the 7 steps in the promotional planning process? I will pause now so you can access those pages in the textbook and answer the question. And that's it. That is chapter 15 in a nutshell. I will post this to the Google Classroom assignment so that you can finish this chapter in the series for Precision Exam Certification called Marketing 1. See you next time with chapter 16.